of your screen. You can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either floor, English, or French. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For our first panel, I would like to welcome our three witnesses. Today, we are joined by Jean Belzile, Acting Executive Director, Research by video conference and representing École de Technologie Supérieure. And our next witness for this panel is Sonia Chaurier, President and Chief Executive Officer, also joining by video conference, representing Invest Ottawa. And our third witness for today is Anita Pollock, President and Chief Executive Officer, representing Grace Rocks. Welcome. She's here in person. All the witnesses will have 5 minutes for their opening remarks, and then we will go to the round of questioning. So we will begin with Mr. Belzile. You have the floor. Go ahead. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Merci aux membres du comité pour cette invitation.
Thank you for the invitation. You may not know ETS because it is only an engineering school, but it is the second biggest engineering faculty in Canada. We have been working for a number of years to transform technologies, research-driven technologies, into concrete solutions in direct connection with industry and operation needs. It is precisely in this transition from innovation to deployment that a strategic challenge for Canada now lies, particularly in the areas of defense and dual-use technologies. The primary challenge Canada faces is the difficulty in rapidly adopting and integrating research-driven innovations into concrete capabilities, especially in the areas of defense and dual-use technologies. Canada already has a recognized innovation ecosystem, but the current mechanisms do not always allow these innovations to be deployed and adopted quickly enough to meet operational timelines. This difficulty is concentrated in the critical phases, prototyping, testing, and integration, where existing mechanisms remain slow, fragmented, and poorly adapted. In practical terms, technologies developed domestically take too long to reach the field or are deployed more quickly abroad. Canada thus bears the costs of research without always capturing its benefits. The result is a loss of strategic and economic value and an increased dependence on external solutions. This directly affects our technological sovereignty and our capacity to act. This situation cannot be explained by a lack of research capacity. The goal is not to rebuild, but to activate what already exists. It is precisely in this critical zone between research and integration that strongly industry-integrated applied research models, like that of our institution, find their place. At ETS, several researchers have been working for years on projects related to security, defense, and dual-use technologies, in collaboration with industrial and institutional partners. Personally, my career as a professor is based on these collaborations. These activities are built on an integrated ecosystem that connects research, validation, and technology transfer to industry. For example, most research conducted at ETS translates directly into technology transfers to industrial partners. We also work in close partnership with major industrial companies such as Thales, Safran, and CAE. And this concerns particular areas of critical communications, aerospace, and embedded systems, enabling technologies to be developed and tested under near real-world conditions. At the same time, our technology incubator, Centech, supports startups developing dual-use technologies in cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and autonomous systems. This ecosystem is further strengthened by environments such as the AXC space, a collaborative platform that directly connects operational needs with incubators, startups, companies, and researchers. These capabilities are already being mobilized in concrete projects in partnership with industrial partners and addressing operational challenges, notably through federal programs such as the IDES program. Our prototyping platforms make it possible to rapidly de-risk technologies and prepare them for integration into existing systems. This model already significantly reduces the time between research and its practical application. The challenge today is not to create new capabilities, but to extend and further connect this type of model to defense needs upstream of projects. It is by strengthening this network between researchers, industries, and end users that we will be able to durably accelerate the deployment of innovations in the field. And we already have the necessary ability to react. Canada already has the capabilities needed to act. The primary challenge today is not a lack of research, but our ability to better connect these capabilities to real needs from the very earliest stages. At ETS, our approach is grounded in applied research. The model works, and it needs to be deployed on a larger scale, particularly in connection with defense needs. The priority is therefore clear. Connect existing capabilities, integrate defense and users from the outset, and enable rapid cycles of testing and validation. Without this, Canada will continue to develop technologies it does not deploy to the benefit of others. Canada has the means to act. It must now activate them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, now we will go to Ms. Shourie, President and Chief Executive Officer representing Invest Ottawa. Please go ahead. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Canada is at a defining moment. L'environnement de sécurité mondiale évolue rapidement, et avec lui,
the global security environment is shifting rapidly, and with it, the expectations on Canada to build sovereign capability, strengthen our forces, and contribute meaningfully to our allies.
Nous faisons face à une
With the Government of Canada committing 5% of GDP on defense, the question is not simply how much we spend, it's how we leverage that investment. This is about execution and impact, and this depends on one thing, how well we mobilize our national ecosystem. Canada has extraordinary assets, world-class universities, colleges and hospitals, a highly skilled workforce, federal labs, industry, from our ambitious entrepreneurs to startups and scale-ups, Canadian anchors and multinationals, and our investment and innovation landscape. They must work together to achieve a shared vision and goals. These assets cannot operate in parallel. They must be a fully coordinated system at the scale of this investment, from programs to platforms, from inputs to outcomes, from fragmentation to integration. Defense, investment, innovation, research, procurement, and economic growth are one system. This is how every dollar of the 5% delivers maximum national value. First recommendation, national inventory and strategic alignment. We must conduct a capability assessment across industry, academia, government, and the investment and entrepreneurship ecosystem. Not a static report, but a living dynamic map of Canadian capability. This enables us to identify where we can lead globally, target investments where we punch above our weight. This is how investment delivers global leadership, not just participation, aligning research, funding, and procurement to mission, and ensuring 5% GDP investment is directed with precision and purpose. In Canada's capital region, we have taken this approach. Ottawa-Gatineau has a concentration of defense assets, expertise, and innovation that does not exist anywhere else in the country. Through our Global Defense Innovation Hub strategy, we are putting them to work. We are pursuing $3 billion in collective investment to unlock 18,000 new jobs and $9 billion in GDP while strengthening sovereign capabilities. We are ambitiously pursuing moonshots from the headquarters of the Defense Security Resiliency Bank to the spin-out of the Canadian Photonics Fabrication Centre into a commercial compound standalone semiconductor fab. Every region in this country has distinct strengths. Combine them regionally, connect them nationally. That is the blueprint. Recommendation 2, leverage and integrate core infrastructure. Canada has already made major investments that are critically important in NRC, granting councils, academic research programs, regional development agencies, and initiatives like Borealis, NATO Diana, and the forthcoming National AI Strategy. The opportunity is to connect them and layer in new investment where opportunity exists, where we can punch above our weight, capture both funded and unfunded concepts in a national innovation pipeline so they can be connected, recombined, and deployed as priorities evolve. New defense spending can't simply add volume. It must build on an integrated, cohesive, collaborative national ecosystem. Recommendation 3, accelerate lab to deployment and procurement pathways. The success of this investment will be measured by one thing: what reaches our forces and allies. In Canada's capital region, we're advancing this through AREX.0, developed by Invest Ottawa, our ITB-qualified R&D complex and NATO Diana Test Centre, serving dynamic companies with integrated testing, direct D&D and Canadian Armed Forces end-user engagement, and procurement vehicles, enabling early-stage deployment. The pathway must be consistent and continuous. Research, test, validate, procure, and scale. Procurement must be integrated from the outset. We must support multi-company consortia as well, because defense customers don't buy components, they buy integrated systems. Consortia allows us to build mission-ready capability, compete globally, and export to allied markets. Recommendation 4, further invest in and deepen industry, academic, and government research collaboration. We must simply double down on collaboration and the investment required to scale it. We applaud the $1.6 billion in budget 2025 for research. We must build on this to keep pace with other nations and maximize our impact where the opportunity is greatest. This means more applied collaborative research, stronger industry academic partnerships, accelerated commercialization, and a relentless focus on homegrown capability. We must also attract trusted, values-based aligned capital from allied nations, ensuring global investment strengthens our sovereignty. Our post-secondary institutions here, Algonquin, Carleton, La Cité, and U Ottawa, a U15 research-intensive university, are already delivering, training future tech and trade leaders, collaborating with entrepreneurs, D&D, and global partners, harnessing deep expertise in autonomy, drones, quantum, aerospace, cyber, AI, and Arctic. Research-intensive universities, colleges, and hospitals are core engines of innovation and infrastructure. We have the talent, the capability, and the investment. Every dollar must strengthen our forces, protect our country, and serve our allies. Let's build the strongest, most sovereign Canada together.
Thank you. And now we will proceed to Madame Pollock for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Anita Pollock. I'm a proud Métis woman from St. Louis, Saskatchewan, Treaty 6 Territory, and CEO of Race Rocks, an Indigenous-owned, women-led technology company with over a decade of experience in the defense sector. We have delivered over $20 million in training systems to the Royal Canadian Navy and generated over $40 million in industrial technological benefits with major defense primes. Innovation is at the core of everything we build and deliver. It is what makes our products and services effective in the field. The Defense Industrial Strategy rightly identifies dual-use technologies as central to Canada's defense commitments. This is precisely the space we operate in, and I want to show you what that looks like in practice. The Canadian Coast Guard Western Region has built strong partnerships with over 70 coastal nations on domain awareness and security. Together, they've built the framework for an integrated marine workforce. Race Rocks is the technology partner behind CSR, Coastal Security Readiness System. A shared governance structure gives Coast Guard, coastal nations, and commercial operators each their own advisory board with observer seats across them to keep mariner standards aligned. 3 outcomes: workforce development, coastal security, Canadian export capacity. That is what dual use looks like when it works. And it's our experience navigating these innovation programs firsthand that has taught us the most important lessons we bring to the committee today. The existing architecture has gaps, some specific to Indigenous businesses and some that undermine Canada's ability to build sovereign industrial capability. First, eligibility criteria are built around established firms, existing IP, revenue history, and access to private capital for cost sharing. These are barriers that compound for Indigenous SMEs, who may have the capability and the proven track record, but not the balance sheet yet. Second, when flexibility is communicated to Indigenous businesses, it is not designed into the program. At Pacifican RDII session, a government slide explicitly stated that Indigenous-led businesses may be offered more flexible funding terms. When we followed up, we were redirected to the standard online application. No criteria listed, no Indigenous pathway described. The commitment that was in the communication was there, but it was never designed into the program. And third, this is what I most want the committee to understand. The current innovation systems have no bridge between validation and commercialization. RaceRock delivered a fast-boat full-motion simulator with VR headset to the Royal Canadian Navy through the Innovation Solutions Canada testing stream. The Navy rated it 5 out of 5 stars. It was validated and still in use today. However, the Navy had no procurement budget, and without a contract to purchase the technology, commercialization could not proceed. This is not a technology gap. This is a system design gap, and it is costing Canada the sovereign industrial capacity it's trying to build. Indigenous business owners in Canada represent an extraordinary range of backgrounds, structures, and relationships. Some operate independently of community structures. With proven federal delivery track records and demonstrated capability, the government counts us towards its 5% Indigenous procurement targets. It does not extend that same recognition when we apply for innovation support. That is not a gap in intent, that is a gap in design. We are asking for one thing, consistency. If the government counts on us as Indigenous businesses when it spends, we ask it counts on us as Indigenous business when it invests. A clear Indigenous business pathway, evidenced by completed federal contracts, technical validations, and Indigenous Business Directory certification, is a chance to close that gap. Canada cannot meet its NATO commitments through large primes alone. Dual-use R&D distributed across Indigenous SMEs is exactly the kind of industrial base the Defence Industrial Strategy calls for. Indigenous businesses are ready to be part of Canada's defence commitments. We are asking for a system that is ready for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Pollack. And with that, we will go to our round of questioning.
Madam Chair.
Yes, MP
Madam Chair,
Baldinelli.
before we begin, just a point of clarification. I was hoping that you could share with us publicly the status of committee invitations to the Minister of Defense, Minister of Industry, Minister of Public Works and Procurement, the Secretary of State for Defense Procurement, as well as the CEO of the Defense Investment Agency. I was hoping that you could share that with us publicly, please.
I will share it, but the email was sent out to all the members. Hope everyone has got the email.
And the public at home, Canadians who are our taxpayers, would like that information known, Madam Chair. So if you could share that with us publicly, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Just to clarify, invitations were sent to Ministers of Industry, Defence and Public Safety for the current study on Canada's dual use and defence research needs. The clerk has sent me the following information. All ministers were invited to appear for Monday, May 4th and Tuesday, April 28th. Minister McGuinty responded on April 28th, thank you very much for this invitation and the committee's interest in national defence. Unfortunately, Minister McGuinty is unable to appear at Science and Research at this time. Minister for Public Works and Procurements responded for the April 28th meeting. We have received the message from our Minister's office that they are respectfully declining the invitation. However, given the subject matter of this study, the committee may wish to invite Secretary of State Defence Procurement, Minister Feur. And after consultation with the members who submitted the witnesses on invitation was sent to Secretary of State for Defence Procurement for Thursday, May 7th, who responded, Minister Furs is away next week and unable to attend. The Minister's office is considering the other dates in June, and we will get back to you once his office confirms his availability. Minister for Industry responded on for the Thursday, April 30th. Unfortunately, Minister Jolie is unavailable to appear at the Science and Research Committee on May 4th. She will be appearing at Indu at the same time. And another invitation was sent to Minister Jolie for Thursday, June 11th, on Tuesday, May 5th. So we haven't received the response on that. So these were the responses which we got, and the email was sent to all the members.
And quickly, just point of clarification, the CEO of the Defence Investment Agency, have we received a response to that?
These, just one second, let me just check with the clerk.
This was what I provided yesterday.
We start and then we will look. I will let you know. The clerk is looking into it. Okay, so we will begin our rounds of 6 minutes each, and we will begin with MP Ho for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
I get full 6 minutes? Yes. Okay. I'd like to thank the...
Sorry, point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, 1 second.
Would the time not have been taken off given that you had already started the next round? You had started the first round of questioning, and there is no such thing as a point of information. So it would, technically, the time should have been running.
No, we didn't start it, so we will see how we can compensate other members also.
Okay, well, then in that case, further question for you. Perhaps we could also clarify for the viewing public that, in fact, the ministers that were named by my friend opposite were actually not part of the request in the original motion, correct?
Yes, I can read the motion.
just to be, while we're searching through the motion.
Pendant que nous cherchons la motion, si j'ai bien compris, on a demandé à ces personnes de comparaître à titre de témoins. Je vais lire.
Just pulling out the motion. So on Monday, February 9th, the
Alors,
standing
lundi, le 29 février, le Comité permanent sur la science et la recherche a adopté la motion suivante que conformément à l'article 108.3 du règlement, le Comité de la science et de la recherche commence une étude sur le rôle des universités et collèges. Les experts et les départements fédéraux qui appuient les besoins en matière de défense et de double utilisation, que le comité consacre à cette étude au moins 4 réunions, que le comité présente son rapport à la Chambre. Donc, les noms des ministres n'ont pas été mentionnés. Alors, pour que ce soit bien clair, le comité a demandé que certains témoins comparaissent. Il s'agit de ministres, de président, directeur général, mais personne n'est contraint, à moins que la motion n'indique qu'ils sont contraints à comparaître. Je veux juste m'en assurer. Oui, pour préciser sur la question que vous posez, ils n'ont pas été inclus. J'ai lu la motion telle qu'elle a été adoptée par ce comité. Ces ministres faisaient partie de la liste de témoins qui a été soumise au greffier. Nous les avons invités. Je vous ai lu les réponses que nous avons reçues. Oui, mais donc, il n'était pas mentionné, mais nous disons dans la motion ministères fédéraux. Et les ministres de la Couronne sont à la tête de ces ministères. Et étant donné que le gouvernement va dépenser au fil des 5 prochaines années presque 82 milliards de dollars en augmentation de dépenses de défense et environ 6,6 milliards sur 6 ans pour la stratégie industrielle de défense. Donc, nous sentions qu'il était pertinent d'inviter les ministres concernant les divers portefeuilles que nous avons indiqués. Je demandais simplement une précision. Donc, où en sommes-nous avant ces invitations envoyées aux ministres de venir nous parler dans le contexte d'une étude pertinente? Merci pour votre intervention. Nous avons des témoins. Il faut faire attention de ne pas perdre le temps des témoins qui ont pris le temps d'être ici pour contribuer à notre étude. Donc, des invitations ont été envoyées. Nous leur donnons 2 jours pour répondre, mais nous devons tous comprendre que les ministres sont occupés. Et si le ministre n'a pas... Il est parfois très difficile de changer leurs horaires. Nous pouvons aller vérifier, mais j'aimerais que nous puissions continuer la ronde de questions. Je pense qu'il y a eu assez de questions sur ce sujet. Nous devrions pouvoir poser des questions aux témoins. Un dernier commentaire sur cette question. On a invité un certain nombre de ministres et pas un seul n'est disponible. L'étude va couvrir plusieurs semaines. Je ne peux pas commenter sur les raisons qui font que ces ministres ne sont pas disponibles, mais je pense que nous avons suffisamment discuté de cette question. Nous devrions commencer la ronde de questions. Monsieur le député Blanchette-Jonca.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You've been exchanging with MPs. Can we try not to talk over top of one another? I know you'd like to try to oversee things, but it's difficult for the interpreters, and then I can't get the interpretation. All right?
We will now proceed with the round of questioning. I think we had enough discussion. MP Ho for 6 minutes.
I have 6 minutes. Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for some of the witnesses who are here today. And we're now a year in with this committee, and we have this study today on defense industrial strategy, the liberal defense industrial strategy. And I can't help but notice that this is a liberal study, by the way. It was commenced by a liberal member to have this study, and it's very unfortunate that we can't get a single liberal minister. I understand there's scheduling conflicts, but well over a month's notice, we'd expect maybe one individual to show up, one Liberal minister to show up, or one high-priced Liberal bureaucrat to show up, except apparently all
Point
of
of
them
order,
had
Madam
completely-
Chair.
This is my time. by
Just
the
one
way.
second point
It's a
of
point of
order.
order
We'll
so
stop
that
the
your
clock.
clock.
Yes, MP Noor Mohammed.
I think it's really important that if we're going to have conversations in this committee, that we don't brand nonpartisan public servants as liberal bureaucrats. I mean, we are now crossing a ton of lines here.
You're literally.
Please, MP Ho, you should be mindful of our bureaucrats, and please go ahead.
Well, they're friends of the Liberal Prime Minister, then and they've known each other for a long time. Then I'd say the Liberal bureaucrats, or if they're former Liberal staffers, then I would call them. I think it's a fair characterization. And having this committee here, it's supposed to be holding the government to account, right? Like, is to review, to investigate, to produce documents. But what we get are witnesses that are either liberal insiders, they're corporate lobbyists who are sometimes registered lobbyists who are really representing their own special interests, or they're special interest groups, they're former liberal staffers, and they're just cheerleaders for the government. And we want some criticism of the government. I understand we're not here to always criticize the government. We're here to work with the government if the government wants us, our advice. But they're just singing praises most of the time. Or sometimes you have organizations that are receiving multi-million dollar to the tune of millions or tens of millions every year on this committee, which I think is, I mean, I don't think their opinions are going to be, it might be a little biased because they're dependent, their very existence are dependent on it. We have an organization here today on this panel who has received millions of dollars every year ever since the Liberal government has taken power in 2015. And I don't know if their testimony, of course, is going to be a little biased towards the government. And I can't help but notice that they're going to be singing praises to the Liberal government. Because, again, their existence is dependent on multi-million
Point of
dollar
order, Madam Chair.
consulting contracts. My time stopped.
Your time's every time your time
Yes,
stops, yeah.
MP Noor Mohammed.
The member opposite stated or implied inaccurately.
I think we are getting into debate.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Madam Chair, if we're going to talk about the mandate of the committee, there's an implied comment here. There was a very clear assertion of what this committee does. In fact, the mandate of this committee, Madam Chair, is absolutely not what the member opposite has said. And so I think we need to be very, very clear about when we are referring to matters of content in respect of the specific nature and mandate of the committee, that actually clear and not misleading. So that when we're posing questions, when we're doing studies, that it's in fact within the scope of the committee.
Get into debate. Thank you. And we will go back to MP
Sorry, I
Ho.
just been interrupted. How much time do I have left?
3 minutes and 28 seconds.
Okay. So, this is a democratic body, right? MPs are democratically elected. This is a committee of parliament, so it's a democratic body. But it seems like the facts are too inconvenient for that Liberal member. I've been interrupted multiple times in my 6-minute round. That's an unprecedented number of interruptions. So I think what we can do right now is move my motion, spend the rest of my time moving my motion, the motion that was put on notice on May 5th, and I'd like to speak on the motion as well. I'd like to speak on my motion, and you don't know which motion I'm referring to. I'd like to speak on the motion. Is that a point of order, or is that? I'd like to distribute copies of the motion.
Yes, please,
From
can
May
you
5th,
move your
the
motion? Yes.
I have copies of the motion to distribute here. Move the motion on May 5th, that is the Standing Committee on Science and Research undertake a study of the Government of Canada's space procurement practices, including how federal departments and agencies acquire space-related infrastructure, technology, and service. I have some copies for all members here, including the clerk and analysts. Just was put on notice on May 5th. I'm going to continue that the study examined the effectiveness, transparency, and value for money of these federal procurement practices, including the use of public funds, contracting models, and risk management frameworks. That the study also assessed the extent to which federal space investments support the retention of intellectual property, commercialization of Canadian innovation, and long-term growth of Canada's space economy. That the committee consider whether current procurement approaches adequately prioritize domestic capability, industrial development, and safeguarding of Canadian developed technologies. That the committee invite the President of the Canadian Space Agency, the Chief Science Advisor, the Minister of Industry, the Minister of National Defense, relevant department officials, representatives from the Canadian space sector, and any other witnesses the committee deems relevant. That the committee hold no fewer than 4 meetings, and that the committee report its findings to the House. Sounds like a pretty reasonable study, well within the mandate of the Science and Research Committee. And of course, it's very top. I think copies have now been distributed. Everyone, just for the reference, I know there's a number of motions that were moved by a number of members on May 5th, so now you know which one I'm referring to. I believe it's translated into French as well. Of course, in light of the government's space bill, I believe it's Bill C-28, procurement is, of course, very important. And of course, in light of the $200 million gravel pit procurement that ended up being a money pit, which, of course, this committee, the Liberal members of this committee, had shut down any debate in previous meetings. So I would now like to just move on to sort of debating the points and how important procurement is, right? And that, before I even get into procurement, it's the job of the legislative branch of government. We live in a government where there's a separation of powers, right? In our democracy, there's the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive. And the legislative is there to put safeguards, to restrict the powers of the executive. But what we see with the Liberals time and time again, including Bill C-28, is to is to do the opposite, is to give more powers to the executive branch, to remove safeguards, remove the checks and balances, to give them more power, more, the executive branch being 400-some thousand bureaucrats. We've lost track of how many there are. I mean, it's grown so much. It's grown by the magnitude of 50% in the period of 10 years since this Liberal government has been in power, which, by the way, has grown faster than the rate of population growth in Canada. So it really has ballooned on a per capita basis. So instead of keeping these 400,000 unelected bureaucrats, I mean, many of them are doing good work. Many of them are good people. And we're not trying to alienate this group of people who are hardworking, facing the same affordability challenges that this Liberal government has put them through, facing the same immigration crisis, facing the same public safety crime crisis that this Liberal government has unleashed on them in the last 11 years. But that's why we're talking procurement, because the executive branch needs to buy things and contract, and there's nothing wrong about procurement, but we need to investigate when procurement is not working. We saw, case in point, about the gravel pit in Nova Scotia of $200 million, where the firm involved in the contract where the registered lobbyist is a former Liberal staffer. And it was like, it's not, they didn't even buy the gravel pit. It was just a 10-year lease for $200 million. And it wasn't like it was a fully developed space pad. It was a gravel pit. So you still have to spend money to actually develop it. And all we want is the production of documents, to see what the contracts are. There's nothing partisan about that. There's nothing partisan about that. As a matter of fact, we understand the Liberal ministers. There's like 20, 30, 40 of them. Lost track of how many there are because the size of this government has grown so much. But we're talking about the Liberal members of this committee who are not members of ministers of the Crown. It's incumbent on you to investigate, to produce those documents. I understand sometimes a bureaucrat might make a bad decision, a procurement decision, and it might not be immediately the fault of elected Liberal members. And you folks have to deal with constituents' concerns. You have to deal with advancing your constituents' interests. A lot of noble, admirable things. And you don't have the oversight of every minute being able to watch over 400,000 bureaucrats. But guess what? Instead of investigating it, this procurement failures, you decide to hide it under the rug, sweep it under the rug. And instead of finding the truth, you block the truth from being investigated. And maybe we can find out the truth. And so we don't have to point any fingers. We can say, hey, look, maybe there was a bad apple in the army of 400,000 bureaucrats. But what we saw was shutting down of the debate on the space pad procurement fiasco. Not once, but twice. First to turn off the cameras was a vote. Every Liberal member voted to turn off the cameras, turn off the ability to have transcribed.
Point of order, Madam
translated
Chair.
sentences. Number two.
Just 1 second. Point of order.
We have less than 20 minutes left in this round. We've got witnesses that are waiting. If this is gonna go on, perhaps we could do the courteous thing and ask the witnesses to leave and invite them back at a different meeting, because it's disrespectful to them. And it's clear that Mr. Ho has a number of things that he thinks are important that he'd like to share with us.
Thank you. We will have to continue because this panel is until 12 o'clock.
Well,
So,
we'll have time.
yeah.
We'll have
Yes.
time.
Let's not get into debate, one person at a time.
and we do have
MP
to-
Ho, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have to be mindful of the time of the witnesses, and that we wouldn't be here if we were able to investigate, right? So now we're having this motion that we're debating today about space procurement, which I think is a very important one in light of the fiasco that happened weeks ago that we learned in Nova Scotia, in light of Bill C-28, which would, again, it's a bill. I don't want to get into that, too much debate on that. I know it's being studied in the Transport Committee, which, again, arguably should also be studied here in the Science Committee. I mean, if we're not talking about space here in the Science Committee, I mean, what else are we going to talk about, right? So that's what, yeah, science, yeah, you mean liberal talking points? That's what it seems like we're just spinning over and over again. And it just sounds like this is not a new government at all. I mean, the Liberals like to say, oh, this is a new Liberal government, that it is some kind of, but it's really a rebranding exercise. It's the same we saw with prescribed IT, we saw with, which is not being held up in the Health Committee, we saw here, the space pad, the money pit for $200 million. It's the same type of liberal scandal, liberal corruption, liberal cover-ups that we've seen in the last Liberal government, under the last Liberal Prime Minister. And it seems like nothing has changed, right? Nothing has changed. And behind, and, you know, this spaceport, right? I mean, it's, yeah, we talk about rockets, satellites, launch capacity, our sovereign access to space, and Canada's role in the frontier of science and technology. These are all noble pursuits, well within the purview of this Science and Research Committee. But when you look beneath those glossy press releases, liberal press releases, which again is quite, yeah, and I know members opposite are going to say, oh, you can't say that's partisan. How can you say the press releases from the minister's office? Okay, let's take a look at the budget in 2025, the costly credit card liberal budget. That's smacking billions of doubling our deficit. You thought Justin Trudeau, sorry, the last Liberal Prime Minister, had a spending problem, inflationary spending problem. Well, this new Prime Minister, who touts himself as the economist, has managed to double the deficit. We didn't even think that would be possible in the Canadian imagination, but yet they did that. So let's look at the cover of those two Liberal propaganda booklets. It's called the Canada Strong Spring Fiscal Update. I mean, what is the Liberal Party slogan? Canada Strong. You go to the Liberal Party convention, which is a partisan activity. And of course, every party has their own convention. In that convention, they literally have Canada Strong as their slogan. So now we're conflating party lines and the government. Then, of course, the Liberals love to blur lines. They blur the lines of partisanship and government, which should be separate. They blur the lines of private interest and public interests to the point where these NGOs, these public sector organizations, they call it, are really just funded by the public, right? They're not really, and you think that they're private. Some of these are privately owned, but they're dependent fully on handouts from this Liberal government. And they're staffed by former Liberal staffers, former Liberal MPs, blurring those lines. They also blur the lines of the executive branch and the legislative branch. They also blur the lines of the judiciary too, the judicial branch of government. And I don't want to get too into that because that, but for example, 20% of judicial appointments, federal judicial appointments, are people who are Liberal Party donors. Given that 1% of all Canadians, less than 1%, donate to a political party at all, which is pretty high. And something like 1%, according to the study, of donors are conservative, that are judicially appointed. So the conservative appointments seem to, people who are conservative donors, who get appointed to the judicial benches, seem to match up with the public, right? The less than 1% of Canadians donate to any political party. Less than 1% of them are conservative donors. But 20% of these of judicial appointments are Liberal Party donors. So they're literally paying into the re-election funds of Liberal members of Parliament and the Liberal Party. And then they get a judicial appointment. I'm not saying they're getting it in return, but one can make that characterization if they connect those dots. So they blur the lines of the judiciary, which is supposed to hold this government account. They put in activist judges, right? And I have a great respect for judges as someone who's a lawyer by training. But not when they're staffed by activists, when they're decided
Madam Chair,
by political
point of order.
appointments.
Yeah, just 1 second. Point of order, MP Noor Mohammed.
Under the Sims protocol of the 100th report of Proc in the 42nd Parliament, I would like to use my prerogative to interrupt and intervene and ask questions while the member has the floor. This doesn't require Mr. Ho to cede the floor, but it does give me the right to be able to speak and indeed to address some of the points that he's made.
Just 1 second.
I
I just
my
need
time.
to.
It's-
No,
1
it's
second,
this-
please.
This actually,
This is my time.
Just 1
They're looking
second.
me to look it up.
MP Noor Mohammed, let me just check. Give me 1 second. The clerk is checking on it, so if we can just wait. I just need clarification. The clerk is checking on the point of order which has been raised by MP Noor Mohammed. I will suspend the meeting so that we can look into it. The meeting is suspended. patience, and especially for our witnesses. Sorry for all this, what's happening, but the question which was raised by MP Noor Mohammed, I would like to provide exactly what that SIMS protocol says. So it's called as the SIMS protocol, interventions when a member has the floor. At its 55th meeting on March 21st, 2017, the committee developed a convention allowing a member to raise a question or comment related to the topic immediately at hand without the speaker formally losing the floor or his or her place on the list of the speaker. Once the intervention is concluded, the speaker once again has the floor and the existing list of speaker continues unimpeded. It is up to the member who has the floor, along with the chair, to decide whether to permit this intervention. The original speaker may also take back the floor at any time and resume speaking. The committee named this convention the SIMS Protocol after Mr. Scott Sims, member for Coast for Bays Central Notre Dame, who first employed this convention at the meeting on 21st of March 2017. So based on what this is, I will ask Mr. Ho if he would allow what MP Noor Mohammed said about the questioning. MP Ho.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I respectfully decline his request. He can speak when he puts his hand up and gets the floor. Every member has the right to speak when they have the floor. I feel like I'd like to continue on the point I was making.
Okay, MP Noor Mohammed is not here right now, so you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so getting back to the procurement, right? And a part of procurement that we see with this Liberal government is the issuance of Liberal press releases. It's a rebranding exercise. That's where I left off. And it's something that, if you look deeper into it, it's something familiar. It's Liberal spending. There's almost always, I won't say always, but almost always, a Liberal insider involved. More Liberal excuses for why the problem exists when they can't look in the mirror themselves. And just contempt for the taxpayer, for everyday Canadians who are struggling to get by, who are giving a significant percentage of their tax money to this federal government, their hard-earned money as taxes to this federal government. So again, going back to the example I was going to use is, the Liberal government announced that there's this 10-year, $200 million agreement to lease a dedicated space launch pad at the Spaceport Nova Scotia near Canso, which is operated by Maritime Launch Services, which, by the way, again, has a former Liberal staffer as a lobbyist. The government says the facility will support the Department of National Defense, which is why we want the Defense Minister to come, the Canadian Armed Forces, and the wider federal needs. And that'll support sort of their defense industrial strategy, again, why we want the Minister of Industry to come. And that it's about a sovereign launch capacity to address Canada's future needs in space. Again, of course, sovereignty matters. And as Conservatives support sovereignty, we also want to make sure we play a meaningful role in Canada's future in space. Now, I want to just be very clear. Yeah, Conservatives, we support this. Sovereignty. We support sovereignty to the point we introduced the Canada Sovereignty Act as a motion earlier this year, back in a couple months ago. It was voted down by every one of the Liberal members. We support Canadian science, but again, we've seen our motions voted down at this committee time and time again by each and every Liberal member. We support Canadian research, but of course we see Liberals injecting their ideology, whether it's DEI requirements. Now it's gone so bad that it's not just DEI requirements, there's DEI quotas. It's like if you're not a specific race or gender, you cannot apply. It's explicitly excluded in this form of discriminatory hiring practices. And then the Liberals say, oh, we want research, promote research excellence and all that. Well, how can you have research excellence if you're excluding a significant chunk of the population. How are we going to compete with other global actors that are in this space race? And of course, we support Canadian industry. And we want to it's real Canadian industry, because under the Liberals' own Buy Canadian definition, which the government sets, you can say it's Buy Canadian and put the Buy Canadian label on, even if the firm, the vendor to the government, who's taking the taxpayer money, is foreign owned. How is that Buy Canadian? Just because they have a domestic presence, which, by the way, we've seen in contribution agreements that domestic workers doesn't even mean by hiring Canadian citizens. So let's say we have a foreign-owned firm who has a branch in Canada. We've seen this with many manufacturing contracts that contribution agreements that this government has done, where not only is the firm foreign-owned, but you don't even have to hire Canadians. You just have to hire workers in Canada, so you can hire non-citizens, temporary residents, temporary foreign workers. So it's and then they call it Buy Canadian. So the ownership is not Canadian. The paychecks aren't going to Canadians, but yet that is something.
Point of order, MP Deschamps.
Madam Chair, I don't see the relevance of what my colleague is saying, especially that we seem in favor of that motion. We are all in agreement, and it's just running the clock.
Thank you.
Waiting.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just ask the member to keep his remarks relevant to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's very relevant. My remarks is about the point I was making right now is about Buy Canadian, and this is about procurement. It's
One
about
person
space.
at a time. MP, who has the floor?
We're talking about space procurement of the space economy, and I'm talking about a Buy Canadian rule that the government allegedly implements. How is that not related? It's very related. And of course, the sovereignty means not being dependent on foreign countries for our space capabilities. That's something that's worth pursuing. But this Liberal Prime Minister gave a glowing speech, very vague speech at Davos, pretty much just taking a swipe at different hegemons and what he calls hegemons, without really mentioning which country he's referring to. Keeping it vague so he can play both sides. So I'll leave it to the Liberal Prime Minister to discuss that, or maybe the Liberal members know which countries he's referring to. But space matters. It matters for a number of things, for our defense, for our Arctic, for things like communications. It matters for disaster response, things like agriculture, navigation, weather forecasting, telecommunications, national security, and of course the future of our economy. But when we talk about the economy, we want to talk about the Canadian economy for Canadians, not for a select few hand-picked projects that benefit Liberal insiders. Now, Canada has a proud history in space. We built the Canadarm. We helped define robotics in orbit. Canadian astronauts have inspired generations of young people to look at the stars and imagine something greater than themselves. Canadian scientists, Canadian engineers, machinists, programmers, entrepreneurs who have made real contributions to humanity's exploration of space. Parts that are Canadian designed and made are in the International Space Station that's still orbiting Earth. So we should not be anti-space and shut down things like the $200 million space pad, which wasn't really a space pad. We thought we got a launch pad, but taxpayers ended up getting a gravel pit, which some are characterizing as a money pit. This motion is not anti-science. Liberals like to accuse us of being anti-science. It's not anti-research. It's very much pro-research. We want to make sure the research money is not going to waste. And it's not anti-innovation. It is very much pro-innovation. It's also pro-accountability. Accountability, of course, is a word that does not exist in the dictionary, in the vocabulary of Liberals. As a matter of fact, I think that word needs to be removed from the vocabulary before they buy their Liberal Party membership card. it's pro-taxpayer, making sure taxpayers who are working day in and day out to keep our country afloat, everyday Canadians, are paying those tax dollars that's spent properly. We also want to make sure we have results for deliver for Canadians, because what we've seen is a lot of liberal rhetoric, and it's pretty egregious. I mean, this current Liberal Prime Minister sings a lot of rhetoric, even more than the last Liberal Prime Minister, but has nothing to show for it. Things like on pipelines, for example, a lot of rhetoric on energy and infrastructure, but not a whole lot of results. And he seems to eat his own words. On trade, first it's elbows up, then it's elbows down, and who cares? Then it's, our relationship with the United States is a rupture, a weakness. Then it's, we're stronger together. A lot of rhetoric for this self-proclaimed master negotiator, but not a whole lot of results. Still no trade deal. Tariffs have doubled and tripled, and our manufacturing sectors and workers are being hit. And nobody seems on the Liberal benches seem to care, because they collect their paycheck regardless. See, that's the thing between the private sector and the public sector. In the private sector, if your business fails and it doesn't do well because there's no market for your idea, for your product, you don't succeed. You go bankrupt, or you have to close down. But under the Liberal ideology, they just keep printing money at the expense of taxpayers, keep borrowing at the expense of taxpayers. They keep printing money.
Sorry for interrupting, MP Ho.
Moving back to
just 1 second. One of our witnesses has to leave. So thank you, Ms. Shori, for appearing before the committee. I know you have to leave. You have some other commitments. So thank you once again, and sorry for this. You can please, if you want to leave, you can leave. Thank you, MP Ho.
Yes, going back to my point, thank you, Madam Chair. To my point, our motion here is pro-space, space exploration. So if Canada is going to be serious about space sector, we need a serious government, and we don't have a serious government. And I've listed some examples of how this government is not serious. And it can't be built on liberal press releases, on a house of cards, insider arrangements, and a $200 million blank check to a liberal connected firm that is being currently described as a concrete pad, a gravel lot, for a promise that someday, maybe, or as I use the words of the Prime Minister, possible but not probable, and then that's like probable but not quite possible. So he has a good way of playing on the words so that he can speak out of both sides of his liberal mouth, and try to put up these illusions into thinking, and Canadians can see through this smoke and mirrors, these illusions that this Liberal Prime Minister is trying to put up. And again, is for this prospect that maybe Canada would be able to launch rockets from home. And so this is real money, right? This is not monopoly money. And I know the Liberals have trying to devalue our currency so much that our currency sometimes feels like monopoly money to some spectators, because our currency isn't worth much when there's no investment into Canada. There's no exports from Canada, and they're killing our industry. And that's what drives the valuation of our currency to appreciate and bring that, which may help bring down the cost of living, is if other countries buy our exports and have to sell their currencies to buy Canadian dollars to buy our exports, or to invest in Canada, so that again they have to buy Canadian dollars, which would drive up the value of our currency, in order to make investments in Canada and to create jobs. But of course, Liberals are very keen to pass anti-job, job-killing, anti-growth policies that drive away investment, which again drives away businesses, thwarts exports, which again, so it's a vicious cycle. And like we've seen, the dollar is so weak now compared to the U.S. dollar. Prolonged periods. This is not just some fluctuation year to year. This has been 11 years of our Canadian dollar being so weak. And this $200 million is not just, it's not monopoly money. Going back to my point, it's taxpayer money. It's money collected on the backs of families who are already struggling to afford groceries, food, rent, mortgage payments, gas, heating, all the basic necessities of life. And for young families with young children, it's money for formula, baby formula, for diapers, and other essentials. And what are taxpayers getting? What are taxpayers actually getting? That is the basic question about procurement.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Point of order, MP Nathan.
Madam Chair, through you, I want to know what the Conservative member Vincent Ho from Richmond Hill riding is talking about and going on while we have spent so much money, our taxpayer money, to bring so many witnesses from around Canada, and yet we have not asked a single question of them of the study that we are currently doing. And they're going on about a study that we are in agreement with, that to come.
Debate, thank you. MP Ho.
Yeah, and this is very much important because money taken out of taxpayers. First of all, I don't believe that's a point of order, but she said what she said already. But this is very much relevant to the discussion because we're talking about procurement using taxpayer dollars, money taxed on the backs of Canadians. So we want to talk about the human element of this. It's not some abstract spreadsheet. This is real people, real families. But I have lots more to say, but I understand maybe some, this is, we only have limited time, limited resources, so I could give up the floor and move on to some of the other members on this committee to speak on this motion so that they can all get a chance to discuss how important space procurement is, or procurement in general. Real procurement, not procurement where taxpayer money is siphoned for liberal insiders. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Ho. I have 4 people on the speaking list. MP Deschamps-Thériault, you are next.
Je vais y aller très brièvement, Madame la
I'll be
Présidente.
very brief, Madam Chair. I think my colleague's behavior is quite unfortunate. It's disrespectful towards our witnesses and our work. These witnesses have traveled from far, and that was on the taxpayers' dime. We are talking about Canada's dual use and defence research needs. My colleague's matter could have been settled in a few minutes. We are in favour of what he was saying. I think we've lost enough time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next I have is MP Ellison. MP Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. Yeah, I would like to echo the previous comments. We have already indicated that we are in support of this motion, and we have wasted enough of our witnesses' valuable time. I think this has been an embarrassment. That committee time has been used for no good purpose, as the member from Richmond Hill has been spending a tremendous amount of time talking as if we're going to oppose this bill when we have said we are going to. So this has been a tremendous waste of our witnesses' time, and to the witnesses, I apologize.
Thank you, MP Ellison. I have next is MP Baldinelli and then MP Noor Mohammed.
Madam Chair, just for the sake of brevity, I would like to see us get to the vote as quickly as possible. Thank you.
MP Noor Mohammed.
Yeah, I would agree with my friend opposite. We would have gladly supported this. We didn't need the YouTube video, and we're happy to get to a vote.
MP Rana.
Yeah, I would like to go for voting, and we already saw lots of wastage of time, and our honorable colleague he wasted a lot. He wasted lots of time. We got our witnesses around the.
One person at a time. MP Rana has the floor, so please don't overspeak.
We apologize to our witnesses. Like, we wasted their time, and we wasted our nation's time. And please go for the voting.
Thank you. MP Ho.
That's all. I'd like to go to a vote, and I wish the Liberals would apologize every time they would speak for 2 or 3 hours on something. And I think this is very important to Canadian taxpayers, and I don't think it's a waste of time. What they should be doing is, what the Liberals should be doing is apologizing to taxpayers. But I'm happy to cede the floor now and move to a vote.
MP, would you like to be on the speaking list, MP?
Speak out of turn.
Okay. So with that, the list of the speakers is exhausted, and I will ask the clerk to please take the vote on MP Ho's motion. Please.
Thank you very much. Monsieur Deschênes-Thériault?
Oui.
Mr. Ellefson?
Yes.
Ms. McKelvey?
Yes.
Madame Nathan? Mr. Nur Mohammed?
Yes.
Mr. Rana? Mr. Bellinelli?
Yes.
Mr. Holman?
Yes.
Mr. Ho?
Yes.
Mr. Mahal?
Big yes.
Mr. Blanquet-Jogat?
Oui.
Okay. So the motion is adopted. Okay. So we started for the last panel, we started with the 6-minute round with MP Ho, and after that we have not been able to finish that first round. But because of the time now, we have 3 witnesses for the second panel. So I would suggest that we get the opening remarks from all the 3 and then proceed with our first round. The Liberals and the Bloc are left on that, the 6-minute round. And then we will see what time we have. So I will ask, one of the witnesses from the first round had to leave. So now, and all of them will be here for the round of questioning. So I will ask, I will welcome our 3 new witnesses for our second panel. So for the second panel, we are joined by Dr. Ian Church, Associate Professor, Department Geodesy and Geomatics Engineering, University of New Brunswick. He's here in person. We also have Dr. Robert Hubert, Professor, Center for Military Security and Strategic Studies, University of Calgary. He has joined us by video conference. And we have Mr. Ken Doyle, Executive Director, representing Tech Access Canada, here in person. So we will begin with Dr. Church. Please go ahead. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. Thank you.
Hello, Madam Chair. I'm here today to offer the perspective of a researcher who's been working in dual-use technology and application development. As an associate professor in geodesy and geomatics engineering at the University of New Brunswick, where I run the Ocean Mapping Group, I focus on measuring the depths and features of our oceans using sonar systems and on applied ocean physics simulations in ports and harbors, both with a dual-use focus. My research involves collaborating with other researchers, industry partners, and government agencies across Canada, but with a specific focus on the Arctic and, lately, the Antarctic. This work has enhanced navigational safety and advanced our knowledge of the ocean environment, providing a foundation for ocean science, maritime operations, and sovereignty. Today, my statement will address 3 actionable priorities. First, improving collaboration among ocean dual-use technology stakeholders. Second, securing targeted funding to fill gaps in the technology readiness levels. And third, integrating effective training at every stage of the research to operations process. Connections between industry, academia, federal science departments, and the Department of National Defense need to be improved. This includes establishing focused consortia that bridge these organizations to align with specific military priorities, ensuring that the specialized expertise found within these groups is fully integrated into our national defense strategy. Accessible funding programs that prioritize dual-use technology can address these gaps. Ideally, these programs should be integrated into foundational initiatives at the National Sciences and Engineering Research Council, NSERC, and provincial funding agencies. A short-term goal could be to create a dedicated dual-use initiative within the NSERC Alliance program. In my experience, DRDC, or Defense Research and Development Canada, is often not involved in these projects, making engagement challenging for many researchers. Although DRDC delivers vital scientific contributions, its broad mandate can lack domain-specific focus, leading to a disconnect between research and operational systems. In the marine sector, to better connect DND, DRDC, academia, and industry, Canada could look to the U.S. Office of Naval Research, Naval Research Laboratory, and Naval Oceanographic Office as a structural model for funding, development, and operationalization of marine dual-use research, data, and technology. Rather than replicating this model, however, Canada should seek to improve upon it by ensuring innovations are both mission-ready for military applications and contribute to national economic growth. Importantly, integrating First Nations and Inuit priorities into research can transform defense-related projects, such as Arctic seafloor mapping, into collaborative efforts that reinforce both sovereignty and community well-being, surpassing the U.S. approach. Infrastructure and facilities that support both classified and unclassified joint research are essential. While the Defense Innovation Secure Hubs have demonstrated this approach, it is important to ensure these facilities remain accessible to all researchers and are supported by additional programs that address a range of current and emerging technologies and needs. For instance, the Royal Canadian Navy's Arctic offshore patrol ships could be considered a secure hub and could be equipped to collect critical marine operational data by installing an ice-protected multi-beam sonar system, for example, as implemented on the Canadian Coast Guard AOPS, and then be used to support innovative dual-use marine research and improve situational awareness. It is essential to address the entire pipeline from research to operations, including comprehensive training as a key element. Supporting dual-use projects requires establishing sustainable research programs rather than isolated projects. Within these programs, we can recruit and train students who will remain in the field and advance into leadership roles within collaborative organizations. When recruiting highly qualified personnel, it is important to provide clear career pathways to attract suitable candidates for graduate positions, including those eligible for Canadian security clearances. In my experience, adequate funding for these positions is a critical factor in successfully recruiting Canadian candidates. There are also opportunities to tailor educational programs for dual-use applications, as demonstrated by long-standing degree programs in the Department of Geodesy and Geomatics Engineering at UNB for the D&D mapping and charting establishment. Dual-use research should serve as Canada's competitive advantage. By modernizing funding mechanisms, infrastructure, interagency collaboration, and training, Canada can develop a strategy that transforms research into operational capability and economic growth. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will now go to Mr. Hubert. Please go ahead. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. And as a political scientist, I also like to thank you for giving me some first-hand observation on parliamentary procedure.
Good, thank you.
Canada
Parliament in action.
Yes. Canada has a fundamental problem when it comes to understanding defense economies, dual use, and all of the issues that we are now focused on. We simply do not have the capability in Canada, and I'll get into the reasons in a moment, to fully understand, to critically evaluate and understand defense economics in Canada. The community of scholars that are able to watch this is very small. I can list the 5. Craig Stone, who is now retired. We have Dave Perry, who is a head of a think tank. Phil Lachey, who's over at University of Carleton. Richard Samuka, who you heard from, but is also a member of a think tank. And Eleanor Sloan. And the list is pretty well ends at that point. We don't have that robust community and ability to actually examine and provide the arm's length analysis of what basically we're trying to figure out to do in this particular context. There are 3 reasons for this. The first one is, of course, is that our major funding agencies have not chosen to make defense politics and defense economics a priority. When we look at both what the SRSR provides for and what the Canada Research Chairs provide for, it's almost literally impossible to find any acceptance or studies that are in fact being conducted in this context. In fact, when we look at the Canada Research Chairs, and this is, of course, it's my quick examination of this, I can only find 2 that really have defense orientations. There are, of course, very good people. It's Dr. Stephanie Von Heck over at Queen's University in Whitney Lochinbarrel over at Trent, but you're not going to find anybody else on the CRC. So there has not been the support in terms of the individual and intellectual foundations that we need. When we look at D&D Minds program, it is a robust program, and I have to acknowledge that I am a co-director of one of the networks, but the networks are only 3 years in duration. And so you spend your first year setting it up, second year doing the research, the third year, you're again thinking about the renewal, and that, of course, creates difficulties of any longevity. The third problem is universities themselves. They have not made defense studies a priority, and as a result, hirings are reflected in this. I'm constantly producing students that I think would make very good contributions to understanding defense economies, and unfortunately, they don't find positions within academia. For example, Tim Choi, who is now working for Treasury Board on the shipbuilding strategy, a very, very brilliant mind, was not able to find anything within university. Another name that you will see all the time in the press is, of course, Hedner Exner-Perrant, one of Canada's leading experts on critical minerals and mining policy. Again, the difficulty of ensuring that these very bright minds are brought in is very limited. This leads me to my second major point, and that is the research impact. When we look at our attempts to understand Canada's policies, both successes and failures, when it comes for defense economies, and of course, when we talk about dual purposes, we have absolutely no lessons learned. When we look at successful defense procurement projects, such as the C-17s, where are the open studies to tell us how did we get that right? How were we able to move that up? How were we able to bring that under budget? We can also look at the frigate modernization as a success. Where are the studies again on that allow us to say, how were we able to actually bring that in time and actually provide for a very successful follow-up? Likewise, on the negative, where are the studies, for example, when we look at Strong, Secure, and Engaged, that was brought forward in 2017 as Canada's defense policy, and there was considerable attention given to it as being fully costed? Where are the studies to say how successful was that, or if it was not successful, where are the failures? Ultimately, and I'll end on two last points, we also have the difficulty of access to information. It's very hard to interview you folks now in terms of really getting into the bottoms when mistakes are made and when successes. Documents are very difficult. I'm currently researching and looking at our overall maritime strategy. I've spent the last 4 months trying to get access to the Canada Shipbuilding Strategy. Not the government report, not what the government says it says, but the actual report. Now, it may be an indication I'm not just a good researcher on this, and perhaps that's why I can't find it, but I've gone through the access to information. I've used my contacts through Minds. I can't get a handle on that document, which means the document either doesn't exist, and I'm hoping that's not the case, or it has been hidden
Sorry
so
for
well.
interrupting, Dr. Huber. Your time is up, so if you can please wind up.
Okay, and so in conclusion, the question I leave you with as a committee, how can we actually say we're going to have a dual use strategy when we don't understand where we have succeeded and where we have failed? When we do not have the community that we're able to properly access this as any of the other G7 countries are
Sorry
able
for
to do.
interrupting.
Thank
Time
you.
is up, so maybe you can talk further when we go into a round of questioning. And now we will go to Mr. Doyle for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the invitation to join you again for this very timely study. The traditional dual-use model is familiar. Technologies developed for defense, like GPS, the Global Positioning System, eventually find civilian applications. More recently, commercial technologies with roots in defense, like drones and Starlink, are increasingly being adopted for operational use in conflict zones. Rather than relying on these slow and opportunistic evolutions, we have an opportunity to make dual-use innovation intentional, demand-driven, and deployment-focused. Canada has spent decades pushing innovation into the world, hoping someone finds a use for it. Meanwhile, our men and women in uniform are facing real problems in real time. So what if we flip the model? What if we started with the Canadian Armed Forces operational challenges and pulled the best of Canadian innovation toward them fast? Because this isn't about building more innovation, it's about aiming it properly and delivering when it matters. At Technology Access Centers, we don't start with a technological solution looking for a problem. We start with the problem. What are the operational challenges on the ground, at sea, in the air, right now? And then we ask what technologies already exist in Canada that can help solve them. That's a demand-pull model. So we act as scientific troubleshooters and innovation problem solvers. We don't just ask what's possible, we ask what works and how fast can we deploy it. And importantly, this isn't theoretical. A recent independent federal evaluation of the College and Community Innovation Program found that Technology Access Centers are delivering measurable economic and innovation impacts across Canada. The evaluation found that firms working with TACs improve productivity, accelerate time to market, strengthen their competitive position, and increase revenues and hiring. In fact, small firms that worked with the TAC experienced average increases of 143% in sales and 69% in employment following engagement with the TAC compared to companies that did not. That's not innovation theory, that's deployment at work. And we've done this before, in automotive, in energy, in other sectors during moments of disruption or transition. We've helped companies modernize operations, adopt technologies, stay alive, and remain competitive. Not by advising from the sidelines, but by working shoulder to shoulder to implement solutions. We take things that would normally take years for companies to figure out internally, technology adoption, validation, deployment, and compress those timelines dramatically. We're a force multiplier, and more importantly, we're a time compressor. So with that in mind, I want to propose two practical near-term actions. Not studies, not strategies, deployable actions. First, dual-use technology assessments. Under this model, Canadian SMEs would work directly with Technology Access Centres to adapt, prototype, test, validate, and accelerate dual-use technologies while ensuring those same companies retain their intellectual property and commercial upside. We feel the work would generally fall into three streams. First, existing defense technologies that require an objective validation and refinement. Second, civilian technologies with potential defense applications. And third, entirely new solutions to operational challenges identified by the Canadian Armed Forces. Some projects could be completed within 6 months, others 12 to 18 months, but the point is speed. While others are still capability mapping, we're already in the field. Second, supplier modernization for defense readiness. If we're serious about readiness, we need to strengthen the backbone of the supply chain, our Tier 2 and Tier 3 manufacturers and suppliers. These are companies that need to adopt robotics, automation, specialized equipment, advanced manufacturing techniques, and digital systems to increase productivity, meet OEM quality standards, and participate in defense supply chains. If we can help upgrade the shop floor, we can help unlock the supply chain. Canada's done this before. The British Commonwealth Air Training Plan demonstrated what this country can accomplish when infrastructure, talent, and mission align around common purpose. During the Second World War, Canada helped scale the production of the de Havilland Mosquito, a versatile platform adapted into reconnaissance, fighter, bomber, and transport roles, multi-role capability, rapid adaptation, and industrial coordination. Somewhere along that way, that industrial muscle atrophied, and rebuilding it won't be easy, but applied R&D and rapid commercialization are part of that rehabilitation process. Technology Access Centres are a turnkey pan-Canadian network of applied R&D and commercialization centres. We share a common operating model, we're embedded in industry, and we already have the infrastructure, simulation labs, environmental testing facilities, pilot-scale manufacturing capacity, robotics platforms, and specialized testing equipment distributed across the country. We do not need to build a new system. The system already exists. The need has finally aligned with this capacity, so turn us loose. If you want evidence, we can point to more than 50,000 Canadian SMEs that have worked with the Technology Access Centre since 2012. And I'm willing to go further. I'm willing to be held accountable for performance, outputs, and outcomes. Because this is not about more innovation. It's about deploying what we already have when it matters most. So the ask is simple. Unleash us. And let's move at the speed this moment demands. While others are still discussing frameworks, we should already be validating technologies. Our goal should be to have the first wave of projects completed within 180 days of the D-Day anniversary, before December 31st of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to all the witnesses for their opening remarks. We have combined panel 1 and panel 2, so we have 2 witnesses from the first panel and the 3 witnesses from the second panel. When we went to the debate on the motion by MP Ho had completed the 6 minutes of his first round, and we will now proceed to MP Rana for 6 minutes. MP Rana.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all the witnesses for your time and for your patience. My question is to Dr. Church. As we expand our defense surveillance efforts, particularly in northern or remote areas, do we have the opportunity to improve the data of the Canadian Geologic Survey?
Yeah. So this is a good question. Yeah, Madam Chair, it's a combination of operational assets that exist that can help collect and improve our data in the Canadian Arctic. So the Royal Canadian Navy has a big interest in operating the Canadian Arctic. They've built the Harry de Wolf class Arctic offshore patrol vessels, but there's an operational limit to working in the Arctic. Right now, very little of the Arctic is mapped to modern standards, which means it's very difficult to operate in that environment. And as the area becomes more and more ice-free, it becomes more and more challenging to sort of police and limit what other vessels are going up there. So there's a huge need to collect more and more data. Now, a lot of that data is not going to be collected by the Royal Canadian Navy. It's going to be collected by the Coast Guard and collaborations with other federal departments like Natural Resources Canada, Geological Survey of Canada, and specifically the Canadian Hydrographic Service. So by working together, having that maritime situational awareness collected and managed by the Coast Guard, and working together with the Royal Canadian Navy and other federal departments is really going to add a lot of capability to the system. Yeah.
Ms. Pollock, Race Rocks works across defense, aerospace, marine, and Coast Guards trainings. So where is the shift from R&D to operational training? Do you see the most room for collaboration?
Room for collaboration. That would be working on the relationships already built between the Canadian Coast Guard and the coastal nations. Mm-hmm. That's a workforce there that's ready to be developed, actually already developed. All we need now is some shared standards to include them in an integrated workforce. That will help with workforce development and coastal security. Talking to also Dr. Church, they could also be collecting the data to another source, another group to be supporting on the lands and the waters that they know best.
Thank you. And what has your experience been navigating the procurement and innovation ecosystem? And how do you expect the DIS to improve access for companies like yours?
When I spoke earlier to Innovation Solutions Canada testing stream, the validation to commercialization was the biggest challenge for us, knowing that the two programs work sequentially. So when you start into one, knowing that your path will not be disrupted by procurement or the lack of funds in the department that's requiring your services or your goods. Ensuring that you can actually start in a program and complete it, not having money removed from that budget.
And what opportunity do you see for provinces and territories in building out the training and workforce components of the DIS?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The opportunities for the provinces and the territories to collaborate and for the DIS.
Definitely. I think that training, you can build it once and deliver it often. So I think the ability to collaborate amongst different industries with different training platforms is there for us.
Okay, so Madam Chair, sorry, Mr. Chair, I would like to share my time with my colleague, please. Where she go? Oh.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Church, you've done some work demonstrating how, technologies that are developed for civilian use can be adapted to, military use. So today's environment, how would you advise us to shorten that gap between the research side in universities and making that into operationalizing at a military level?
Yeah. So one of the things that we can focus on in that is trying to develop pathways within focused areas. So I think if we can have some of the networks that we've seen developed within ideas, but from a broader perspective, so if we can have more networks that are focused on bringing people together within the same community, within the same research areas, then we can start to see real advancement. So not hugely broad organizations that bring everybody together and not just focusing on very specific things like, quantum or something like that, but focusing more holistically, but in specific areas, I guess. I think that'll have a big impact.
All right, thank you. How much time do I have left? Okay. So how much time do I have left?
6 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Doyle, so if we have, when there's communities that have, military and civilian facilities, close by as part of the same economy. In Winnipeg, we have a large Air Force base, 17 wing. We also have Boeing. We have Standard Aero. We have these civilian companies that, of course, are providing a lot to products that are used in the military. Do you see the defense industrialization strategy that we're putting forward as helping to facilitate this and have it work more seamlessly?
Yes, thank you for the question. I do. In fact, one of our centers in Winnipeg is co-located with a defense company, Magellan Aerospace and Bristol Aerospace, and we try to act as almost WD-40 to get some of that friction out of the picture and make those connections between industry and then the end user, the Canadian Forces, that much more expeditious. And we're able to co-locate with those private sector partners and share resources, upskill personnel, that kind of thing, in the goal of just
For interrupting, time is up. Okay, time is up. Thank you. We will now proceed to MP Blanchet-Jonca for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je salue les témoins qui sont avec nous aujourd'hui. Je les remercie de la
Thank you, Madam
compréhension.
Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for their understanding today, given the situation that we've been experiencing since the beginning of the meeting. My question for Mr. Doyle. Now, technical transfer, is that often the key connection for companies that are trying to put their products onto the market?
And I'll sit down.
Absolutely. It is a mature network. Our pan-Canadian model is based on the CTTTs in Quebec, and the assessment of the program came out yesterday, and all the details on the strength of the model can be found there. I'll ask you a question about a contradiction from the federal government. The government is announcing new defense investments, programs that support colleges and cégeps and college centers for technology transfer. And those are being cut. The innovation program in the colleges and in the committee, those have been brought down. Could these structures be weakened, whereas they focus on research, and yet innovation is at risk? Thank you for the question. That's exactly right. The program has cuts on April 1st, but the spring economic update announced funds for the ESCC program for access to technology for the CTTTs. So I think now the Council has the financial means to deal with the different levels of funding between Canada and the province of Quebec. There's an update of the amount that is given as part of the grant, and that can help with major issues like defense and other ones. Thank you. Can you confirm, is it the whole amount that was lacking? We were talking about a 30% cut for the innovation program. Yes, with the update from last week, now it's completely settled. So NRC will be funding it for the next 5 years to maintain the necessary level for the whole sector. Okay, well, I think we've got the proof that the work of the opposition is working, because I had questioned Minister Jody about that in this very committee. Well, it may very well be for that. Mr. Doyle, the SRX in my region, in this Rimouski Cégep, for example, these support SMEs. Is the strategic role of these infrastructure being underestimated when it comes to our technological sovereign infrastructure? I think so, yes. This infrastructure has been built up over the years with support, with public investment. It's there to support SMEs that don't have the internal means for commercialization. It's around support. That's very important. We want to make sure that these centers can work together to settle an issue within a business that's even bigger. We can multiply the strength of the centers and their different expertise, for example, XRX. And they can collaborate together, and they can come up with something for the industry, and that's all in around Rimouski. Thank you very much. I'll What about concentration? In a research strategy for defense, we can see that there's a desire to focus on large universities. Is there a risk that we completely miss out on applied research? We talked about prototyping, testing, transfers towards smaller businesses. So applied research, you're the experts in that field. Yes, and thank you. I think there's no one size fits all. I think there's absolutely a role for universities and governmental labs to perform projects over 3 or 4 years. Our role, which is unique to us, is to carry out incremental innovation projects, 5, 6 months, 12 months, very quick, and to respond to industry. I'd like to come back to the SMEs that you support. Do they really have access to the federal public contracts, or are they too often blocked at the prototyping stage? There are difficulties with this. The size of the business, their track record and revenues, there are minimums. And of course, they're responsible for public funds, but 99% of the businesses in Canada are really small businesses. And so they're not equipped to win these contracts, at least in the past. Thank you. In a crisis situation or supply chain problems, are you able to test and adapt and quickly repair technology? Do those things become just as important as fundamental research? Oh, yes. There are a lot of requests from businesses for assistance for their supply chains because they can't purchase things from the U.S. yet. And so we can help them find alternatives for the same price or maybe even a lower price, and how to adopt technologies to replace people who can no longer hire people. Should we reserve a section of the new investments for your members, small businesses, colleges, with very prototyping and testing objectives that are very clear and real? Yes, absolutely. I think that's very important. There is a gap currently in the system, and that's been the case for decades. So there's something very targeted for us, because that's something that we do very well. That's my idea. Yes, thank you.
Comes to an end, and we will start our second round of 5 minutes and 2.5 minutes. And the floor goes to MP Mahal for 5 minutes. MP Mahal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here. Dr. Hubbard, I want to start with you. Defense procurement should not be a politically driven topic. Canada should buy the best tool for the job, full stop. As many defense reviews have shown, the F-35 is the best equipped by every measure to fulfill the Royal Canadian Air Force requirements. Do you agree, yes or no?
Yes, I do agree.
Thank you for the brief answer, Doctor. If
I
we
can go on if you'd like.
Thank you. By politicizing this issue, the Liberals are failing to secure Canadian skies. How can Canada credibly claim to defend its sovereignty if it allows political considerations to delay the aircraft its own defense assessments have repeatedly identified as the best option?
Well, thank you for the question. And I think you've just helped me make my point about our dearth of understanding how the process goes. Because if we actually track the length of time that we have spent on trying to make up the decision on what is, from a strategic and warfighting capability, the best selection, and this isn't just my assessment. We've seen this come out of D&D. We've seen this come out of Air Force. We've seen this come from almost all of the serious academics who have looked at this issue. And the question comes, how come, and it goes over both Conservative and Liberal governments, why can't we be like Denmark? Why are we not able to make the decision? Because the Danes, following the beginning of the Ukrainian war in 2014, they changed their decision, which was not to have a fighter aircraft. And within 2 years, they made the decision to get the F-35s. And so my question, of course, is then what takes it so long from a political process from both Conservative and Liberal governments that we have not been able to emulate our Nordic allies and friends? And it comes to the point of our understanding, because I don't have an answer for you. I can't say and point to any study that says this is why it's happened. And I'll connect it to a question to Dr. Church. The Senate report came up in 2005 that said we had 1% of the Arctic mapped or charted to modern standards. Today, that number is 217. I come back to you and say the Coast Guard has always been saying it wants to do multi-beam sonar missions when it goes and does anything so it can map. But the political decision, and again, this goes across conservative and liberal governments, have been not to provide the funds to the Coast Guard to allow it to do the mapping. At a 17% increase over 20 years, that means in another 20 years, we'll be at 34%. And so my question to you, why don't we understand why the political decisions have been made for something that, at least for most of us, would seem quite obvious?
I think you would agree with me that this Liberal government is in power from last 11 years now. And the demographics have changed quite drastically in these 11 years. So I think you have already answered that it would make more incumbent upon the government to make quick decisions and not to prolong or delay these procurements so that these needed equipments can be provided to the military and Air Force on a timely fashion. Dr. Church.
Oh, sorry.
Dr. Church, I would want to come to you now. Across 3 oceans, Canada has the largest coastline in the world. Can you describe the unique challenges that Canada faces when it comes to securing our coast and port infrastructure?
Yeah. So we have a lot of unique challenges. All of our infrastructure is really focused on the east and west coast and has historically not been focused on our largest and probably most strategically important area being the Arctic. So, I started working in the Arctic in 2005 on board the Coast Guard ship Amundsen doing science and mapping up there when it was the only vessel that was equipped to collect data on the seabed within our Arctic environment. And, we made do with the facilities that we had. But it's been excellent to see investments come into improving our Coast Guard infrastructure and the ships and the port infrastructure in the Arctic in order to make sure that we are surveilling those areas. It is concerning to see the Royal Canadian Navy talk about operational needs in the Arctic and not having the capacity to actually operate in most of the Arctic because of the ice conditions. So they're going to be relying heavily on the Coast Guard. And I think now is the time to think critically about how those two groups are going to work together and balance both military interests but also scientific and sovereignty interests in that area.
Mr. Church, time is up for MP Mahal, and we will now proceed to MP Deschamps-Ontario for 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Church. You're the primary investigator on a project that will enhance security and support the growth and productivity of the Port of Belzun and the Port of St. John in New Brunswick. You've received some funding through our defense and industrial strategy for this project. So I would like to hear how is it a great example, how is this project a great example of how we can, at the same time, protect our critical infrastructure and support our economic growth?
Yeah. So we're very proud of that project, and we're really looking forward to seeing how it can evolve. So we have 2 ports in New Brunswick that are fantastic opportunities of locations with huge growth potential, but also big operational challenges. So the Port of St. John, for example, is the most interesting oceanographically port in the world, in my opinion, with the tides of the Bay of Fundy, the St. John River, the different modes of operation and the history within the port. But it's a reality that in most ports across the country and the world, we know very little about what's going on underneath the water. And so that's a scientific and operational concern for the port, but it's also a security concern for understanding just that subsea environment. So if we can learn more about monitoring, predicting, simulating what's going on in those ports and monitor things from a defense perspective and knowing what's happening with that port But at the same time, the same exact simulations we're running, the same data we're collecting is used to help the port bring vessels in and out and improve the logistics of the port. Is a perfect example of crossing that boundary.
Thank you. And I would like to hear how our defense industrial strategy, especially the research component, is an opportunity for universities such as UNB, knowing that there's already some expertise in defense at UNB, and UNB is located near the Gagetown military base.
Yeah, and so it's a huge opportunity for universities like UNB, and UNB is unique in that we're not in the U-15, but we have had a huge focus on defense for a long time, and we've invested in having people to collaborate with the defense side of things, with Base Gagetown being right there. There's a huge opportunity for training, specifically on training, but there's also a lot of opportunities there to take the amazing research that is happening that is quite unique, and it's it's not just UNB where this is happening, but consider some of the defense applications of that, right, and be able to build it into those pathways.
Thank you. I will pass my time to MP Nathan.
Thank you so much to my colleague. I want to ask this question of you, Anita. As a Canadian Indigenous-owned company operating in a dual-use space, what barriers do you face in moving innovation technologies from development into federal procurement and deployment?
Mostly the capital to move the product from a concept to commercialization. Also the infrastructure to support in that. Technical infrastructures are getting more and more expensive, and hopefully there'll be funding for that available. And then also security and cybersecurity. Something for a small business is really hard to keep up with and very expensive.
Thank you for that. So Canada's defense industrial strategy emphasizes sovereignty and domestic capability. What specific investments or policy changes would help Canadian companies like RaceRock scale and compete globally while supporting Canada's national security needs?
The ITB program is a really great program to support small to medium-sized businesses working alongside a defense prime. Learning from them, having the support of their infrastructures is definitely something that I find very advantageous and supportive of RaceRock in the last 10 years.
Very good. And if you could recommend one concrete action this committee should prioritize to strengthen Canada's dual-use innovation ecosystem over the next 5 years, what would it be?
I would think, to Mr. Doyle's comments, is definitely investing into that small to medium-sized businesses and supporting them, working together, and also working with the larger defense primes, but definitely seeing where their technologies can work with other small to medium-sized businesses.
Thank you. How much time do I have?
20 seconds.
Okay, I'll give that time up. So
Okay, thank you. We will now proceed to MP Blanchet-Jonca for 2.5 minutes. MP Blanchet-Jonca.
Monsieur Dole, selon vous, est-ce qu'on investit
Thank you. In your
suffisamment?
opinion, are we investing enough in the ability to build, to manufacture here, or the ability to design here, Mr. Doyle? Well, 70-80% of the cases, yes, but with everything that's happening, there have been incentives to move production elsewhere. Now it's going to be a huge challenge to recreate that capability that we had before in the last 50 years. If we weaken regional infrastructure, applied research, and technological transfer, do we increase our dependence on foreign providers of that technology? Yes, I think we do. With the CTTTs in the rural and urban centers, it serves as a kind of anchor. Before, they were big international companies that would show up in one area and they would influence the supply chain. But now with these centers, there's this role. So there's SMEs who can innovate, create, and commercialize in their area and export elsewhere. And then the benefits are felt here in Canada. What is really missing from the defense industry strategy, in your opinion, for your members, for all the members we talked about, the SMEs, the CTTTs, and applied research? Well, I think that it's support, targeted support for the stage before procurement. for validating technology, prototyping, testing, bring down the risk of commercialization for SMEs so that they can grow, and allow them to enter the procurement system at the federal level. So if I understand is that there are federal mechanisms, but they're not adapted to your type of business members or organizations. It's not the same profile. Yes, indeed. We try to collaborate with businesses at their level, with their timelines. And there are programs to subsidize a project, but sometimes it's 9 to 10 months before you get a decision, and then, you know, the business is already gone under by then. Things have to go faster with these programs and eliminate that risk because these are public funds, but go faster. And what has the government said to those requests? Well, there's support, but we just have to wait. There are mechanisms in place, but I think it's under consideration at the moment. All right.
Members, if they would like to, for me to end this panel here, or they would like to go like for 5 minutes for the Liberals and 5 minutes for the Conservatives, what would be the will of the members? Okay. So with that, I would really like to thank the witnesses for appearing before the committee and for your patience. Sorry, we went over the time, but we have to deal with these. That's how the committees work. So, but I'm really sorry for all like the time you had to sit here. So with that, this panel comes to an end, and the meeting is now adjourned.